Their call went out across the stars. Humans answered through the fire and smoke. The communication array on Kepler Station crackled to life at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Communications Officer Zara Chen nearly spilled her synthetic coffee as the emergency beacon pierced through the usual static of deep space chatter. The signal was unlike anything she had encountered in her 12 years of monitoring interstellar communications. "Captain Morrison, you need to hear this," Zara called out, her voice tight with urgency. She had been tracking routine cargo manifests and mining reports when the transmission broke through every frequency simultaneously. Captain Sarah Morrison rushed to the communications deck, her boots echoing against the metal flooring of the orbital station. The message that filled the bridge speakers was not transmitted in any human language, yet somehow every person present understood it perfectly. The words seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "To any who receive this message, we are the Thylorian Republic. Our worlds burn. Our children cry out in terror. The devourer swarms consume everything in their path. We have held them for 3 cycles, but our defenses crumble. If there are others among the stars who value life, who understand courage, we beg you, help us. Our coordinates follow. We do not know if anyone will answer, but we send this message in hope that somewhere in the vast darkness, someone will hear our plea." The transmission repeated 3 times before cutting to coordinates that led to a system 47 light-years from Earth. Morrison felt her blood run cold as she processed the implications. First contact had finally happened, but not in the way humanity had hoped or prepared for. "Zara, verify those coordinates and run them through our star charts," Morrison ordered. "I want to know everything about that system within the hour." While Zara worked frantically at her console, Morrison opened a priority channel to Earth Command. The conversation that followed would change the course of human history forever. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the holographic display, his weathered face betraying concern as Morrison relayed the message. "Aliens asking for help," Rodriguez muttered, running his hand through his graying hair. "Our xenobiologists said first contact might happen this way, but I never believed it. What's your assessment, Captain?" Morrison pulled up the stellar data that Zara had compiled. "The Thylorian system shows signs of massive industrial development. Multiple planets with clear artificial structures visible from deep space scans. Population estimates suggest billions of inhabitants. Admiral, if this devourer threat is real, we're looking at potential genocide on a scale we can't even comprehend. And if it's a trap?" Rodriguez asked the question that haunted every military mind. "Humanity reveals itself to the galaxy, shows our capabilities and walks into an ambush. Sir, I've analyzed the transmission 17 times. The quantum signatures indicate it was broadcast simultaneously across thousands of frequencies using technology that would require enormous energy expenditure. The emotional resonance patterns in the alien language suggest genuine desperation. Either they're telling the truth, or they've created the most sophisticated deception in galactic history." Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes. Through the view screen, Morrison could see Earth turning slowly in the distance, blue and green and utterly peaceful. How many worlds like Earth had already fallen to whatever force threatened the Thylorians? "Captain, prepare your crew for extended deployment. I'm authorizing Operation Prometheus. We're sending everything we have." The next 18 hours transformed Kepler Station into a hurricane of activity. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols were recalled. Mining vessels were retrofitted with military hardware. Even civilian transports volunteered to carry supplies and personnel to whatever lay ahead. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's xenobiologist, worked around the clock to analyze the Thylorian transmission. Her findings painted a picture of a species remarkably similar to humans in their emotional range and social structures. "They're not that different from us," she reported to Morrison. Their plea reads like something humans would send if we were facing extinction. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Marcus Webb supervised the hasty retrofitting of cargo ships into military vessels. The human fleet had never been designed for large-scale interstellar warfare, but human ingenuity found ways to mount plasma cannons on freighters and turn mining ships into missile platforms. "It's not pretty, Captain, but it'll fight," Webb reported as he watched crews weld armor plating onto civilian vessels. "The miners are volunteering to pilot their own ships into combat. They said if someone's calling for help across the galaxy, humanity doesn't turn away." The Thylorian transmission continued to repeat every 6 hours, and each repetition sounded more desperate than the last. Background analysis revealed increasing interference, suggesting the aliens' communication array was taking damage. Time was running out. Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck as the hastily assembled human fleet prepared for departure. 43 ships of various sizes and configurations, carrying 8,000 volunteers. Some were military personnel, but many were civilians who had simply refused to stay behind when people somewhere in the galaxy needed help. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Taylor approached with a final communication from Earth Command. "Admiral Rodriguez sends his regards. The rest of the Earth Defense Fleet will follow as soon as possible, but he wants us to know. The decision to respond was unanimous in the Emergency Council. Humanity goes to answer the call." As the fleet engaged their hyperspace drives, Morrison felt the weight of representing her entire species for the first time in galactic history. They were flying toward an unknown enemy to help people they had never met, simply because someone had asked for help. The journey to the Thylorian system would take 36 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. During the trip, the human fleet maintained constant communication, sharing tactical plans and contingency strategies. The Thylorians' distress calls continued, growing weaker and more fragmented with each transmission. Dr. Vasquez made a breakthrough during the journey. She managed to partially decode the alien language and sent a response to the Thylorian coordinates. The message was simple. "Thylorian Republic, this is the Human Federation. We received your call. We are coming. Hold on." The response came back within hours, and the raw emotion in the alien voice brought tears to the eyes of hardened space veterans. "Humans? We do not know your species, but if you come to help, you are forever our brothers. We will fight until you arrive. The children sing songs of hope because of your message." As the human fleet approached the edge of the Thylorian system, long-range sensors began picking up the scope of the devastation. 3 planets showed signs of recent orbital bombardment. Space debris from destroyed ships created a glittering field of wreckage that stretched for millions of kilometers. But the Thylorians still fought. Energy signatures indicated active combat occurring around the 4th planet in the system, where massive alien structures continued to fire defensive weapons at an enemy the human sensors couldn't yet clearly identify. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We're about to find out what we're made of. Remember, we came here because someone called for help. That's what humans do. That's who we are." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the Their call went out across the stars. Humans answered through the fire and smoke. The Devourer swarm defied every expectation the human fleet had carried into the Thylorian system. Captain Morrison stared at the tactical display in stunned silence as her sensors revealed the true scope of the enemy they faced. The creatures weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were living vessels, each one the size of a city block, moving through space with an organic fluidity that made her stomach turn. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the weapons station. "How many are there?" The computer's analysis scrolled across the main display, over 3,000 individual bioships, each one pulsing with an inner light that suggested they were very much alive. They moved in coordinated swarms, diving toward the Thylorian homeworld like massive spaceborne locusts, while smaller fighter-sized organisms darted between the larger forms like angry wasps. The Thylorian defense fleet was putting up a valiant fight, but Morrison could see they were being overwhelmed. Their ships were elegant constructions of crystalline metal that fired beams of coherent energy, but for every devourer organism they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Thylorian fleet," Zara announced, her voice cutting through the bridge's shocked silence. The face that appeared on the main screen was definitely alien, yet somehow familiar. The Thylorian commander had features that were almost feline, with large golden eyes and a ridge of bone that ran from the top of his head down to his neck. But the expression of desperate hope was unmistakably universal. "Human vessels. I am Commander Veltar of the Thylorian Republic Defense Force. We did not dare hope anyone would truly come. Our sensors show your ships are smaller than ours, but we will coordinate our efforts. Perhaps together we can save some of our children." Morrison felt the weight of 8,000 human lives under her command as she responded. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Federation Fleet. We're here to help however we can. What are we fighting?" The alien commander's golden eyes darkened. "The Devourers appeared in our space 4 cycles ago. They consume everything, planets, ships, even the energy from our stars. They turn our own matter against us, growing stronger with each victory. We believe they have already consumed 17 civilizations. We may be the 18th. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring from the science station, leaned forward with sudden understanding. "Captain, these organisms, they're not just predators, they're adapting. Look at the spectral analysis. Some of those bioships are incorporating destroyed Thylorian technology into their own structure." The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. An enemy that learned from every battle, that grew stronger by consuming its victims' technology and resources. No wonder 17 civilizations had already fallen. "All human ships, this is Morrison. We're going in. Remember your training. Watch each other's backs, and show these things what happens when they threaten innocent people." The human fleet accelerated toward the battle zone, their ships looking tiny compared to the massive bioforms they were approaching. But what humanity lacked in size, they made up for in sheer, bloody-minded determination. The first engagement came when a group of devourer fighters, organisms the size of human shuttles but moving with predatory grace, detected the approaching human fleet. They peeled away from the main swarm and dove toward the newcomers with terrifying speed. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos, piloting the converted mining ship New Horizon, found herself face to face with one of the creatures. Through her view screen, she could see it wasn't a machine at all. It was alive, with what looked like eyes along its hull and tentacle-like appendages that crackled with bioelectric energy. "Ugly son of a bitch," Santos muttered, then opened fire with the plasma mining tools that had been hastily converted to weapons. The beam cut into the creature's hide, causing it to emit a sound that somehow transmitted through space, a shriek of pain and rage that made every human pilot's blood run cold. But the creature kept coming, and Santos realized with horror that the wound she had inflicted was already beginning to heal. The Devourer slammed into her ship's shields with devastating force, its organic weapons sending feedback that overloaded her navigation systems. That's when Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the captain's younger brother piloting a converted cargo hauler, demonstrated the first lesson the galaxy would learn about human tactics. Instead of trying to outmaneuver the creature, he rammed his ship directly into it at full acceleration. The impact crushed both vessels, but Jake's sacrifice gave Santos the opening she needed to escape. Across the comm channels, his last words echoed. "Tell Sarah I got one of the bastards." The human fleet learned quickly that conventional space combat tactics were useless against an enemy that could heal from damage and adapt to their weapons. But humans had spent centuries learning to fight dirty when their survival was at stake. Commander Webb, leading a squadron of retrofitted cargo ships, came up with a solution that was as brutal as it was effective. Instead of trying to destroy the devourer organisms with energy weapons that they could adapt to, the humans began using their industrial tools in ways they were never intended. All mining ships, this is Webb. Switch to your ore crushers and metal shredders. These things might be able to heal from energy damage. But let's see them put themselves back together after we turn them into hamburger. The tactic worked with horrifying efficiency. Human mining equipment, designed to tear apart asteroids and process raw ore, proved devastatingly effective against the organic hull of the devourer ships. The creature's ability to heal became useless when there wasn't enough of them left to regenerate. But the devourers were learning too. The larger bioships began adapting their attacks, focusing their organic weapons on the human ship's life support systems. They seemed to understand instinctively that these new enemies were dependent on the artificial environments inside their vessels. Dr. Elena Vasquez made a disturbing discovery as she analyzed the enemy behavior patterns. Captain, they're not just attacking randomly. They're studying us. Every human ship they destroy, they're somehow analyzing our technology. We need to be careful what we expose them to. The battle raged for hours, with both human and Thylorian forces taking heavy casualties. The Devourer's superior numbers seemed overwhelming, but gradually the tide began to turn. The combination of Thylorian energy weapons and human industrial equipment created a synergy that the bioships couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Commander Veltar's voice came over the communications channel, thick with emotion that transcended species barriers. Human fleet, your people fight with a fury we have never seen. You attack creatures twice your size without hesitation. Are all humans so fearless? Captain Morrison, nursing a broken arm from when a devourer attack had thrown her against her command console, managed a grim smile. Commander, you asked for help. When humans give their word, we keep it, no matter what. The turning point came when Chief Engineer Webb made a desperate decision that would be remembered for generations. His ship's engines had been damaged by a devourer acid attack, leaving him unable to maneuver. But instead of ejecting or surrendering, he did something that shocked both allies and enemies. Webb aimed his crippled ship directly at the largest devourer bioform, a creature the size of a space station that seemed to be coordinating the entire swarm. As his ship accelerated on its final approach, he activated every explosive device on board, from the mining charges to the reactor's overload sequence. This is for every world you've destroyed. You alien bastards! Webb's voice echoed across all frequencies as his ship impacted the creature's central mass. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. When the glare faded, the massive coordinator organism was gone, and the rest of the swarm suddenly seemed confused and disorganized. Without their leader's guidance, the devourers began attacking each other as much as their enemies. The Thylorian fleet pressed their advantage, their energy weapons cutting through the confused bioships with renewed efficiency. The human survivors regrouped and continued their brutal industrial assault, turning space mining equipment into instruments of war with deadly creativity. As the battle moved into its final phase, Captain Morrison realized that something fundamental had changed. The Devourers were retreating, their remaining bioships pulling back toward the edge of the system. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they had encountered something they couldn't consume or adapt to quickly enough. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Of the 43 ships in the human fleet, only 19 remained operational. The Thelorian losses were equally severe. The space around their homeworld was littered with the wreckage of both allies and enemies. Yet as Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the retreating devourer swarm, she felt a fierce satisfaction. Humanity had answered the call across the stars, had stood beside aliens they had never met, and had proven that some things in the universe were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The real test, however, was yet to come. The Devourers were regrouping at the system's edge, and their bioships were already beginning to show adaptations to the tactics that had driven them back. The battle was won, but the war for galactic survival was just beginning. E-System's edge, sensors immediately focusing on the battle raging around the Thylorian homeworld. What they saw would be burned into their memories forever, and would announce to the galaxy that humanity had arrived. Their call went out. Across the stars, humans answered through the fire and smoke. 3 days after the battle, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Thylorian Orbital Medical Station, watching human and alien engineers work side by side to repair damaged ships. The sight should have been impossible. Two species that had met for the first time less than a week ago, now sharing technology and resources as if they had been allies for centuries. Commander Veltar approached, moving with the graceful gait that seemed natural to his people. His golden eyes held a depth of gratitude that needed no translation. "Captain Morrison, our medical technicians report that your injured crew members are responding well to our healing techniques. The compatibility between our species continues to surprise our scientists." Morrison nodded, though her attention was focused on the edge of the system where long-range sensors continued to track the Devourer fleet. The bioships hadn't left. They were waiting, growing, adapting. 3 massive structures had emerged from their swarm, each one clearly designed to analyze and counter the tactics that had driven them back. "Commander, we need to talk about what comes next. My people didn't come here just to win one battle. We came because someone called for help, and that call is still going out across the galaxy. How many other civilizations are facing these creatures right now?" The Thylorian leader's expression darkened. "Our deep space monitors suggest the Devourers have active operations in at least 12 systems. They do not attack randomly, Captain. They are methodical, consuming one civilization completely before moving to the next. We believe they were saving us for last because our energy weapons posed the greatest threat to their bioships." Dr. Vasquez, who had been working with Thylorian scientists to understand the enemy, joined their conversation with troubling news. "Captain, we've learned something important about their reproduction cycle. The Devourers don't just consume matter for food. They use it to create more of themselves. Every ship they destroy, every planet they strip of resources, becomes raw material for additional bioforms." The implications were staggering. An enemy that grew stronger with every victory, that turned their victims' own technology against them, and that was currently sieging multiple civilizations simultaneously. Humanity had stumbled into a galactic war that had been raging for years. "There's more," Vasquez continued. "The Thylorians' historical records mention similar invasions going back centuries. They think the Devourers work in cycles, appearing, consuming everything they can reach, then disappearing for decades before returning stronger than before. We might be facing the largest wave in recorded history." Morrison felt the weight of representing humanity grow heavier. Through the view screen, she could see the 19 remaining human ships being repaired alongside Thylorian vessels. Such a small force to stand against an enemy that had already consumed 17 civilizations. That's when Lieutenant Taylor approached with a message that would change everything. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from 12 different star systems. The Thylorians have been broadcasting our battle footage across their communication network. Other civilizations are calling for help, and they're specifically asking for human assistance." The message logs told an incredible story. The Zephyrian cloud cities, under attack by Devourer swarms for 2 months. The silicon-based crystalline collective, watching their core worlds being systematically stripped of minerals. the aquatic pelagic union, whose ocean worlds were being drained by massive biopumps that had emerged from the enemy fleet. But most importantly, 3 civilizations had managed to reverse-engineer human tactics from the Thylorian broadcasts. The Corvan Empire had begun converting their mining equipment into weapons. The stellar nomads were using ramming attacks with their cargo vessels. The Botanical Confederation had developed bioweapons specifically designed to disrupt the Devourer's organic systems. "They're learning from us," Morrison realized. "The galaxy is learning to fight back." Commander Veltar's eyes widened as he processed the implications. "Captain, if these tactics can be shared among all free civilizations, if we can coordinate our efforts instead of fighting alone, then maybe we can actually win this war," Morrison finished. The next phase of the conflict began not with weapons or ships, but with communication. Human communications officers worked around the clock to establish contact with every civilization in the galaxy, sharing tactical data and coordinating resistance efforts. The Thylorians' quantum communication networks became the backbone of an unprecedented galactic alliance. The response was overwhelming. 63 different species pledged their fleets to a coordinated defense. Each brought unique capabilities. The hegemony of Silicon provided computational power for tactical analysis. The gas giant collective offered massive industrial capacity, and the hive mind clusters contributed perfect coordination between their ships. But it was humanity's contribution that surprised everyone. While other species offered advanced technology or superior numbers, humans offered something that couldn't be quantified on any tactical display: the absolute refusal to abandon anyone who called for help. When the Corvan Empire's homeworld was completely surrounded by Devourer bioships, it was human volunteers who piloted the most dangerous rescue missions to evacuate civilian populations. When the crystalline collective's core worlds were stripped to their molten cores, human engineers worked in lethal radiation environments to recover their data archives and cultural artifacts. Captain Morrison found herself promoted to Admiral of the Allied Fleet, commanding a force that included vessels from dozens of species. But the real command structure that emerged was unlike anything in military history. Decisions were made based on the principle that no sentient being would be abandoned to the Devourers, regardless of the tactical cost. The final confrontation came when the Alliance tracked the Devourers to their source, a massive structure in deep space that appeared to be both nursery and factory for the bioships. The facility was the size of a small moon, surrounded by thousands of the largest bioforms anyone had ever encountered. The battle plan that emerged from the combined strategic minds of 63 species was breathtakingly complex. Diversionary attacks would draw the defensive swarms away, while stealth ships delivered devastating payloads to the facility's core. But the most dangerous mission fell to the humans: a direct assault on the facility's central chamber to plant a quantum resonance device that would theoretically disrupt the Devourer's ability to coordinate. "Admiral, why does it always come down to humans volunteering for the most suicidal missions?" Commander Veltar asked as they reviewed the final plans. Morrison smiled grimly as she suited up for personal combat. "Because, Commander, when someone needs help, humans don't calculate the odds. We just go." The assault on the Devourer facility became the largest space battle in recorded galactic history. Ships from dozens of species fought side by side, using tactics that combined the best innovations from every civilization. The Thylorians' energy weapons were now coordinated with human ramming attacks, while crystalline computational networks guided botanical bioweapons to maximum effect. Morrison led the core assault team through corridors inside the facility that seemed to breathe and pulse with organic life. The interior was a nightmare of biomechanical systems that seemed to stretch for kilometers in every direction. But the humans pressed forward, carrying their quantum device toward the chamber that their allies' sensors indicated was the facility's nerve center. The final chamber was vast beyond comprehension, containing what could only be described as the mother organism, a bioform so large that it took several minutes to cross. It was surrounded by millions of smaller creatures in various stages of development, all connected by organic networks that pulsed with information. As Morrison and her team fought their way to the center of the chamber, she realized they were looking at the source of every devourer that had ever plagued the galaxy. This single organism had been spawning the swarms for centuries, sending them out to consume civilizations and return with resources for the next wave. The quantum resonance device, a combination of human engineering and Thylaurian energy manipulation, was designed to disrupt the bioelectric networks that allowed the devourers to coordinate. If it worked, every bioship in the galaxy would suddenly find itself isolated, unable to adapt or respond to threats. As Morrison activated the device, the mother organism seemed to become aware of the threat. Massive tentacles, each one thicker than a battleship, lashed toward the human team. But her soldiers had learned to fight in environments no human was ever meant to survive, and they held the line long enough for the device to complete its work. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, devourer bioships suddenly stopped moving in coordination. Without their shared intelligence network, they began attacking each other as often as they attacked their enemies. The facility around Morrison began to convulse as biomechanical systems failed and organic networks collapsed. The evacuation from the dying facility was a nightmare of collapsing passages and failing life support, but the combined fleet managed to extract every member of the assault team. As they watched from a safe distance, the massive structure tore itself apart, its biomechanical systems no longer able to maintain cohesion without the central intelligence. The war against the devourers continued for months as the Allied fleets hunted down the now isolated bioships, but without their ability to coordinate and adapt, the creatures became manageable threats that could be dealt with by conventional military forces. 6 months later, Admiral Morrison stood before the Galactic Council, a body that had been formed specifically to coordinate the ongoing cleanup efforts and plan for future threats. Representatives from 87 species filled the vast chamber, but she noted that the human delegation was still the smallest, consisting of only herself and a handful of advisors. "The threat has been contained," she reported to the assembled delegates. "Devourer activity has been reduced to isolated incidents that can be handled by local defense forces. The galaxy is safe." The response was thunderous applause that seemed to go on for several minutes. When it finally died down, Commander Veltar rose to address the assembly. "We called out across the stars when our worlds burned, and our children cried out in terror. We did not know if anyone would answer. The humans did not just answer. They came through fire and smoke to stand beside us against an enemy that had consumed 17 civilizations. They taught us that sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply refusing to abandon those who need help." As the session concluded, Morrison found herself surrounded by delegates from dozens of species, all wanting to thank humanity for what they had done. But the moment that stayed with her was when a young Thylaurian approached, one of the children whose evacuation from the homeworld had cost 3 human ships and their crews. "Admiral Morrison," the child said in careful English. "My teachers say humans came to help us even though you had never met us before. Is that really true?" Morrison knelt down to the child's level, thinking of all the human volunteers who had died fighting for people they had never met, in places they had never seen, simply because someone had called for help. "Yes," she said simply. "That's what humans do." The child nodded solemnly, then said something that would become the motto of the Galactic Alliance. "Then I want to be human too." As Morrison looked around the vast chamber filled with representatives from nearly 100 species, She realized that in answering the Thylorians' call across the stars, humanity had done more than save civilizations. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be part of something larger than any single species or world. The call had gone out across the stars, and humans had answered through fire and smoke. But more importantly, they had taught the galaxy to answer each other's calls, ensuring that no voice crying out in the darkness would ever go unheard again.